Hello, Bianca.
Hello.
Hello and welcome from Ljubljana.
Thank you.
First of all, it's a great honor, of course, and thank you for joining us. We've just seen your documentary, and of course, we would like to know for the beginning, how did you find out the story? I heard that you first, of course, heard about the book, and when did you decide that this is going to be the topic for your documentary?
Yeah, I first heard about the story on Facebook actually, way back in 2014, and it was a post about the book by Glenn Kurtz, 3 Minutes in Poland, and it also said that you could see the 3 minutes of footage on the website of the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington. So I went to have a look and was immediately completely mesmerized by it. Also because it was in color, which is of course very rare for that time to see something from the 30s in color. So that made it very, brought it very close and made it feel very alive. And I immediately had the idea, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could keep that past in our presence a bit longer? But I was not working as a filmmaker at all at that time. But a few weeks later, the film festival in Rotterdam asked me to make a video essay. And usually that is about a contemporary fiction film. But I asked, hey, this is my chance. Can I try to do something with this old footage? And they said, okay, well, go ahead. And I contacted Glenn and we made a short version for the Rotterdam Film Festival in, let's say, January 2015. And then I thought, I'm not ready. We can still do much more with the material. And then we worked on it for another 5 years with a producer.
Perfect, thank you. Tako da na kratko prevedemo, torej kot pravi Bianca na Facebooku leta 2014 je slišala za objavo in tako jo je pritegnil material, ki je posnet v barvah, ostalo pa je v spominu predvsem to, kako narediti iz tega celoten film. V Rotterdamu na filmskem festivalu so dobili priložnost, da s kratkim filmom leta 2015 poizkušajo, sedaj pa so naredili celovečerni dokumentarni film. Of course, I want to ask you how many experts was included in making this movie, because of course you're a historian, you're dealing with history, of course you're familiar with movie industry, but how many experts did you need to incorporate in making this movie, because you need to have a lot of experts from different fields?
Well, we not that many in the end. We also tried kind of a few things that didn't work out in the end. For instance, I thought if we find a lip reader who can lip read Yiddish, we will know what the people are saying, because some you see really very clearly speaking. And eventually we found 2 lip readers, but they both said the fragments are too short and too blurry to be able to say with any certainty what they are saying. And the same with the things on the wall that we couldn't identify. So yeah, we did a lot of asking in that sense, but not everything came to fruition, let's say. But in a way, that was also because then you have to do things, you have to look for different creative solutions. So I thought if we can't know for sure what they said, we have, you can predict in any conversation a few of the words that will be said. Like here today we say film and Nashelsk and so on. So then I thought we kind of make an abstract version of a conversation and put that in the movie in all the languages that were probably spoken there that day.
How did you start with the research? Because of course everything changed when you found Maurice. Was that in the process of making a movie or before? And how did you, of course, decide to go to Nashelsk to visit Detroit?
Mr. Chandler was already found before I started to work with the film, and that was all in the book by Glenn. So we could use a lot of that research for the movie. I think if that book hadn't existed, the film would also not exist. And he found Mr. Chandler just because his granddaughter was also looking at old footage, and hey, this is old footage of Nashelsk, and she looked and recognized her grandfather. And then he himself looked and also recognized himself, and that was, of course, a big opening for the research, because he also knew again other survivors who, Mr. Klodek, for instance, who's moved to or stayed in London after the war. And it was great when we had a showing in of the film in London at the Jewish Film Festival. Mr. Klodek himself passed away, but his wife and all his children and grandchildren came to the first night. So that was a very special occasion. Yeah.
And what about the trips to Nashelsk, to Detroit? Why was it?
I went to Detroit to speak with Mr. Chandler, because he emigrated to America after the war, and how is also actually a great story that is not in the book, because he remembered there was let's say a cousin came to visit who already lived in America in the 30s, and he had one of these big trunks, and on this trunk was an address, and all through the war he remembered that address that was on the trunk. So after the war, he wrote a letter to that address. And it was somewhere in Nashville, Tennessee, I think. He has a kind of photographic memory, Mr. Chandler. And the mailman saw the address on the letter, but he knew that person had died that he had written to. But he knew that person had other family in the neighborhood. So he gave the letter to them. So, and that's how Mr. Chandler was able to go to America. So there's lots of, keeps on being all kind of coincidences to this story. And right. in Nashelsk, it was, I knew that I didn't want to add footage of the town now, so we just went there because I wanted to see it for myself and speak to the historian that you hear in the film, Mr. Suwinski, and record the sound of what it is like now. And back then, that was, I think, in 2018, I think, there was nothing that could remind you of the Jewish history of the town. But now, thanks to the efforts of Glenn Kurtz and other descendants of people from Nashelsk, it has changed a bit already. There's some attention to it in the small local museum, and children in school, which is actually in the building that used to be the Jewish school before the war. Now get a kind of lessons about the Jewish history. So that is a very positive development.
Perfect, thank you. Ja, tako kot smo lahko slišali, torej so uporabljali različne tehnike in sicer so poskušali tudi z branjem z ustnic, ampak so kasneje ugotovili, da samo branje iz ustnic ne bo ravno prineslo rezultatov, ker je nemogoče na tak način izvedeti, kaj se je govorilo. So pa, kot je dejala tudi Bianca z Maurisom, ki so ga našli že ob izidu knjige, knjiga je namreč išla nekaj let pred nastankom filma, dobili osnovo za iskanje preživelih. Kot pravi sama, so imeli tudi zelo čustveno premiero v Londonu, kjer se je udeležila premiere žena enega izmed preživelih, ki je sicer medtem že umrl, in pa njegova družina. Govorila je tudi o poti, namreč obiskala je tako Detroit kot na Šelsk v času priprave na samo snemanje. V Detroit je odšla zato, da bi se pogovorila s preživelim Maurisom Chandlerjem, ki je imel tudi to zanimivo zgodbo, da je pravzaprav v Združene države Amerike prišel tako, da si je skozi celotno drugo svetovno vojno zapomnil naslov, ki je bil na enem izmed tovornjakov, naslov, ki ga je peljal v Nashville, Tennessee, in tako je po vojni emigriral v Združene države Amerike. Kot pravi sama, je obiskala tudi na Šelsk, prvič leta 2018, pa ne zato, da bi posnela, kaj se dogaja oziroma kakšno je moderno mesto, temveč zato, da bi tam govorila z zgodovinarji in zato, da bi dala občutek, kakšna je zvočna podoba oziroma kulisa v tem mestu. V letu 2018, ko ga je ona obiskala, tam še ni bilo ničesar, nobenega spomenika, nobenega muzeja, danes pa ravno zaradi knjige oziroma filma lahko tudi v Šelsku najdemo tako spominski muzej, kot tudi šolo, ki je v nekdanji judovski šoli. Kakšno vprašanje strani publike že sedaj? Applause from Ljubljana. I hope that you will hear it. Dajmo en glasen aplauz, da prosim. We have also a question from the audience.
Yes.
Bom poskušala v angleščini, pa če ne bo šlo, boste pomagali s prevodom. I would like to thank you for this film very, very much.
Thank you.
And I saw, that was the second time I saw this film. It was before in our small Kinodvor performed. Actually, I have no question about this story. It's so well done. This forensic that you could find out every detail possible from these 3 minutes and a half. I admire your work, your co-workers, all the people involved in this film very, very much. And when I first saw this film, my first thought was, why does not our schools in general, in the world, in Europe, I don't know, perform this film each year from each new public, about 15 to 18 and 27th of January, because the film explains Holocaust itself in all possible ways, without great speeches, without nevermore, never forget, and so on. This was my first thought. But that is not our business, not yours, not mine. I would really express my admire for all my heart. And just a little question for the end. What is your you symbolically mentioned 2 birds in the end of the film, 2 birds over this small town in 38. Why do you put it out, these 2 little birds? That was my question.
Yeah, well, for me it is a bit like, it's so almost you miss it immediately if you don't really pay attention very well. It's very fleeting, and it is almost like the end of what you could possibly record. And also for me, it's in a moment in the film that you've just heard about all the horrible things that happen, and what is left to to say. There is not really anything left to say, but still life goes on, and life did go on also in Nashelsk, and how can we get to terms with that? So a lot of meaning in the birds for me.
Perfect, thank you. Ja, tako kot smo lahko slišali, torej ste ptici takšni, ki bi hitro ju spregledali, ampak glede na to, da je bilo še malo neizrečenega, kar je ostalo, življenje pa teče dalje v Našelsku, se je nekako simbolično seveda navezala tudi na ti dve ptici, ki ju nikakor ne gre spregledati. I also wanted to ask you, how did you decide not to put any modern videos, any modern interviews, actually, except of the 3D graphic of the square? It's all based on those 3 minutes from David.
Yeah, I think that is the most important thing we have. So I thought it's the best to really focus on this, and not anything I added would be a distraction and not a addition to what we see, because now you really have the feeling that you can somehow, it's an illusion of course, but somehow enter that time and be in the film. And I thought that would work much stronger than going in and out all the time.
Ja, tako kot pravi, torej osredotočeni smo lahko ves čas na posnetek, iluzija časa, v katero vstopamo, ostane pravzaprav nedotaknjena. Vse ostalo, kar bi lahko posnela danes, bi bilo odvečno, ne pa kot dodatek. How did you get, of course, your narrator, Helena Bonham Carter, because she makes a lot with her narration. How was, of course, to get in touch with her and to involve her in the cooperation?
Yeah, I thought it was very important to have a really good actor to read the voiceover, because that can really add something. And I asked her to do it in a way, not a lot of times in documentaries, this kind of voiceover voices are kind of like the voice of God, someone who knows everything and talks from above to us. But I asked her, can you be more, let's say, together with the audience on a kind of journey of discovery? Yes, you know more, but you don't know everything neither. So you're more one of the audience than someone from high above. And my husband knew her, so we just asked her, and she was interested to do it. She also has a very interesting history connected to the war herself, so I think that might have played a role in her saying yes.
Perfect, great to hear that. Ja, torej želela si je dobrega igralca oziroma igralke, ki bi lahko nariral oziroma pripovedoval zgodbo. Ves čas pri dokumentarnih filmih imamo nekakšen božanski glas vsevednega pripovedovalca, tukaj pa je želela ravno drugačne. Želela je pripovedovalko, ki bi pravzaprav raziskovala in bila radovedna, ki bi bila samo eden izmed gledalcev. In tudi Helena Bonham Carter s svojo zgodovino, z povezanostjo z vojno, je hitro pristala na to, da je tista, ki nam pripoveduje celotno pripoved. Še kakšno vprašanje strani publike?
Namreč kako so uspeli dvakrat prikazati iste roke. Prvič so roke otrok, ki hočejo biti. In ko se drugič prikaže, so to roke, ki prosijo za pomoč. To me je grozno prepričalo.
Najlepša hvala. We have actually a question about the detail of the hands, because when we see the hands from the children, actually for the first time we just see their hands, and for the second time they're hoping for, praying for help. Why did you actually decided to have this detail, and was it intentional to have those two different shots?
Yes, at a certain moment, you're gonna try to use the material in all kind of different ways. I don't think my intention was not that they really ask for help, but you could see it that way.
Yes. Ja, torej ni bilo namerno, ampak definitivno so interpretacije ravno tisto, kar je želela spodbuditi s filmom. Še kakšno vprašanje?
Jaz imam eno kratko vprašanje. In sicer ljudje so skupinsko poimenovani glede na narodnost, seveda Judje, v enem momentu tudi je govor o Poljakih. Dobri, bi rekel, častnik, ki je posodil plašč, je Nemec. Mučitelji, ki so bičali ljudi, so pa oni. Kako to razložiti?
Super, hvala za vprašanje. Actually, the question about the nationalities, because we hear, of course, about the Jewish people, we hear about Polish people, we hear about the German officer, but when they are beating them in camps, you name them as them. It's not based with nationality. How did you decide to have them?
Well, that is an eyewitness report. And the person who wrote that eyewitness report in 1939, he wrote it like that. So that was not my decision, but his decision. But you can be sure that the they is the German officers who are, or the German army who is like that, who is meant with they.
Ja, torej gre seveda za Nemce, ampak glede na poročilo jasnovica, ki je tukaj dobesedno podano, je pač tisti jasnovidec takrat govoril o onih, ni se še vezal na nacionalnost. Še kakšno vprašanje? Če bo še kakšno, kar dvignite roko. I also wanted to ask you about the decision. You somehow prolonged their lives with having this movie. And I also read in one review that it's not lengthening, but it's deepening.
That sounds nice, yes. Yeah.
Do you have this feeling of course, prolonging their lives? Because when we are watching the movie, we have this feeling that this community still exists, that these people are still alive. Was that
I think that is because I think because it's in color, it brings it very close. And also because it's mostly these kids that are really looking you in the eye. So I think it's a very frustrating piece of film to watch, because at the one hand you feel that you really are getting very close to the people you see, but at the other hand you know that that is an illusion. You cannot bridge the ravine of time. It's stopping you. So it's a lot of conflicting emotions, I think, you have when you watch this old footage.
Whose idea was it to begin and end the movie with actually the same clip, but of course the viewer has different eyes?
Exactly. Yeah, that was one of the first things I thought of, that I wanted to do it like this. And a lot of time people who want to buy it to show it on TV say, can't we cut off the first 3 minutes? I say, no. That is the whole point of it, is that when you see it first and then you see it after an hour, you see it again, and then your whole relationship with it changes. You start to recognize people, and you know their stories a little bit. So you can actually see what it brings if you really concentrate on something small.
Ja, torej barvna tehnika je tista, ki nam je definitivno približala celotne posnetke. S tem, ko nas otroci gledajo, se nekako navežemo na celotno dogajanje, na zgodbo teh protagonistov. Seveda pa je frustrirajoče to, da se zavedamo, kakšna je bila posledica oziroma kaj se je s temi ljudmi dogajalo v naslednjih letih. Hkrati pa pravi, da je želela tako koncipirati film, da se na začetku in na koncu pojavijo isti posnetki. Kljub temu, da so jim mnogi svetovali, naj odreže prve 3 minute, je vztrajala pri tem, da je to poanta filma in da bo film ostal v takšni podobi, kot si je začrtala. Še kakšno vprašanje? Maybe for the end, I have to ask you about your new project. Of course, you are somehow still connected with the Second World War and with your native country. You did a lot of research about Amsterdam.
Yes.
And this time you're moving from books to movies.
Yes, yes. I at the same time as I was working on this film, 3 Minutes Lengthening, I was working on making a book called Atlas of an Occupied City, and that is about a lot of things that happened in Amsterdam between 1940 and 1945. It will tell you also a lot of things, of course, about the Jewish deportations of I think we had 80,000 Jews in Amsterdam before the war, and there were 60,000 deported. So that, of course, that does something to a city. And for me, it's still like how when you walk around Amsterdam now, because it wasn't bombed or anything, so all the buildings and everything still looks exactly the same as in 1942, let's say. So that was for me one of the reasons to make this book. And now my husband is making that book into a documentary. Yeah.
Wow, looking forward to
Yes.
see it as well.
Yes.
Thank you once again. Mislim, da se lahko še enkrat z aplauzom zahvalimo naši gosti.
Thank you.
Ja, kot pravi, že pripravlja naslednji dokumentarni film, namreč pisala je knjigo Atlas okupiranega mesta med leti 40 in 45. Sama je iz Amsterdama in seveda najbolje pozna, kaj se je dogajalo v nizozemski prestolnici med drugo svetovno vojno, tako da že pripravlja dokumentarni film o tej temi, o kateri je že napisala knjigo, in seveda upamo, da ga bomo videli tudi mi v Kinodvoru. Once again, thank you, Bianca, thank you for being with us and thank you for bringing this great movie to Slovenia. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.